Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Well, we're going to get started where we often get started, and that's going back to some of the early days. You started off in the armed services, and you have a technical background. How did you go from that to starting your own business?
Yeah, g'day. Thanks, and thanks for the welcome. I did have a technical background, but a lot of people think I had a technical background. So the trade I learned was about soldering resistors and transistors and fault finding actual electronics. For most of my army life, before starting in business, I actually repaired compasses and binoculars. You know, those things you look through, and the things that should point north and often don't. I got started in business because I got fascinated with computers. I went to some computer user groups for this strange operating system called Linux when I was posted in Adelaide back in 1993, 4, maybe 1994, and realised you could take this strange operating system, a PC, you could plug 8 or 16 modems into it, and you could actually start a business. So I did that. Went out and had the most terrifying conversation of my life with my then fiance, future wife. So I said, hey, you know that home loan deposit we've got, $11,000. This back at home has cost 110. You know, so this is put that in perspective, right? Yeah, well, I want to basically spend this on the business and do this and that and this and that. Fully expecting she'd sensibly say no, and she said yes. I thought, shit, now I've got to do it. So that was in Adelaide in late 1994. We actually finally sort of spent the money and built the gear. Was that the question you asked?
Pretty much, I suppose. How you got into your first business, and what motivated you at that time? Like, what was the need that you'd identified? Well,
it was weird. So I was going to these really weird user groups. You know, literally you'd go to someone's backyard and have a garden shed, and you'd have like computers set up, and you'd have coax networks or serial cable networks and parallel. We actually used to network computers using parallel cables. For those of you who aren't old enough, you used to print using a parallel cable. I actually looked over, and so this when I first started Linux, it was all command line prompt. It was all very much what you see now on the Linux sort of shell prompt. I looked over one night we actually, I remember this was the guy lived about a block and a half from the Mitsubishi plant, and he had gotten X Windows compiled and booted up onto his system. And X Windows back then had a really bad habit of literally destroying monitors. You had to put your own refresh settings in with respect to because monitors, the big things we used to use to look at computers, used to have electron guns in them and used to do all sorts of things. And if you got those settings wrong, you could destroy equipment. And it often happened because you had to manually program the monitor settings. No such thing as drivers. And so this actually got it working, and there was no great exploding vacuum tube, which is even better. And I actually saw a web browser on a screen for the first time and went, holy shit, the world's about to change. So by the time I actually spent that $11,000, I hadn't actually used a web browser for myself, but I was pretty sure I could. I was pretty sure I could compile it to work. And yeah, I knew the world was just, everything was going to be different.
So that was your very first startup, and we might keep going and start talking about Pipe Networks, which was your second startup. Can you tell us briefly about that business, how it worked, what the model was?
Yep. So I sold my first business I came back to Brisbane in mid-2000. I caught up with an old chap I went to school with in Rockhampton, Central Queensland, and we started a business called Pipe Networks. And that business was all about providing wholesale services to telecommunications carriers. So we, all sorts of really wonky services, but we started out by providing, it was a great business. We marked up like you would not believe. You could only make more money by selling drugs. Our first product was something called Internet Interconnection or Peering. So what we did was we literally set up an Ethernet switch. This back then when the Ethernet switches used to cost $4,000 or $5,000, right, for a 10 megabit symmetrical Ethernet switch, let alone the gigabits nowadays. And so it used to cost us $4,000, used to cost us about $1,000 a month to leave it in a data center, and we used to charge access to that switch at $1,000 a port a month, and there's 24 ports on it. So the economics of that are really easy to work out. As soon as you sold your fifth customer, everyone is close to 99% gross margin. So we'd actually do this thing called Internet Interconnection. It's a wholesale service. It's the data equivalent of a check clearinghouse, effectively, but for data. So we're a neutral third party, which is why we could I suppose charge so much money. We went from that into building high-speed fibre cable for our customers. We became probably the third largest fibre network in Australia. So we used to basically, we owned our own fibre cable on the street. We listed that company in 2005. I left there in 2008. Went work for Google in California. That's probably a later question, isn't it?
You're skipping ahead, yeah.
All right. So we were basically a wholesale provider of telecommunication services to telecommunications carriers, primarily interconnection services, data centre services, and dark fibre.
Great. So when you started that, it was you and a mate that founded it. How did you grow from there? Did you have funding at that point?
Oh no, well we both threw $70,000 in the hat together, and pretty well went and did it. So we managed to get a pretty good rent-free on a tenancy, built a small data centre in 127 Creek Street in the city, and we funded it through customers. So the next time we raised money, technically, so we contributed, it was about $70,000 like we had as directors' loans effectively. The next time we raised money was in late 2004. We raised $500,000 pre-IPO, and then in the following May we IPO'd and we raised, so between that and the IPO we raised $500,000 pre-IPO, 3.5 IPO. But in that short period of time we had $4.2 million in revenue for the financial year after we listed, and we had about $1 million net profit after tax. So it was a very, very, very profitable business.
Mm. And what were some of the challenges you faced in growing that business?
Oh, Telstra. Telstra were our supplier and our biggest competitor. So anyone who thinks the NBN's a good idea, right? Telstra's a monopoly. What are we doing? We're remonopolising. Was Telstra ever a good idea? We've renamed Telstra NBN. So everyone just stop swallowing the I get my broadband paid for by the taxpayer crap, and understand that we're actually remonopolising, re-centralising our telecoms in this country, and it's disgraceful. So that's a bit of a rant, I'm sorry. But, and actually the reason I'm not back in telecoms, the sovereign risk inside the telecoms is quite astounding, and my old business partner's made a lot of money out of that. He's done really well in that space, but I view the risk of government interference as quite high. He's obviously navigated it quite well. But I'm missing the question here again. Challenges.
So Telstra was
the biggest challenge.
Other startup challenges that you might have faced? Or was it fairly straightforward?
Look, it never was easy, but when I think back on what we did, we never paid ourselves a great deal, so that wasn't a particular issue. Always attracting staff, retaining staff, big issue. Brisbane City Council was an eternal thorn in our side because they thought they wanted to be us. But to me it was just you're in the coal face and you're swinging the pick to get more coal, and so the biggest problem. So when we actually went to grow and we realised we had to raise some money, we wanted to really put the foot down. So we actually looked at how do we. So this is the entrepreneur's dilemma. Everyone, for some reason, thinks raising money is sexy. It's the least sexy thing you can do. It's the hardest thing you can do. And it doesn't stop you from having to do one thing. After you raise money, you've still got to sell to a customer. So why don't you just sell to the customer and raise the money from them? So, I implore you, prove your business by selling. Fund your business from your customers. So, but we understood our, what nowadays you call unit economics. I never knew that until last year. There's this great term called unit economics, but we had a really strong unit economics. We just needed to go faster. So that's we used the investment to pour fuel on the fire. We looked at selling our peering business, which was a business that we probably got about $1.5 million a year revenue from, and probably cost us $200,000 a year to keep alive. Oh, more than that, probably. We were probably making about $600,000 a year net profit out of it. We looked at selling that, we couldn't. We looked at debt, we couldn't get it, and so we ended up raising money. And we ended up raising it on the public market. We did an IPO.
When you started Pipe Networks, did you think the internet would grow to its current state?
Well, the internet we had when we started Pipe Networks, I think the internet's always evolved, hasn't it? So the growth of the internet hasn't surprised me. Probably how fast it's got to where it is now has, but the fact that it's always going to get there. We're about 11% of the way into the internet journey. We are just such at the cusp of. When I had my ISP in Adelaide, this is another NBN rant. When I had my ISP in Adelaide, I had that from November 94 to mid 2000. We had 11 occasions where we had to buy new equipment and swap it out for last mile access technologies. That's every 6 months, or not every 6, yeah, probably every 7 or 8 months. We were literally tearing our gear out and putting new stuff in. So when someone says that fibre to the home or fibre to the node were the last technology we ever use, it's absolute bullshit. It just doesn't happen. You know, the NBN's all about the most risky sort of technology, and we've transferred that risk to the taxpayer. So has the internet come as far as I think it would? It's always constantly evolving. The speeds have increased. I left Pipe Networks. I'm going to wreck your story. I left Pipe Networks and went to work at Google in 2008.
That's my next question.
That's all right. My job there, actually my job that employed me for and what I ended up doing, I get there, you know, it's a great place to work when you get there on day one saying, you know the thing we employed you for? Yes. Well, you're not going to do that. You're going to do something 90 degrees different. Okay. Good thing I haven't come from Australia to California. So I ended up being the program manager to build a high capacity transmission between the data centres in North America. We're building 3.2 terabit per second links between.
How does that vary from what you were initially brought on to do?
I was brought on to do a transmission, what they call strategic negotiator role, to actually purchase capacity in submarine. I had some work in submarine cables. So I was brought on to do stuff in the Asia Pacific region to building stuff in North America. This is how bad it was. I actually had a notepad in meetings. I had 29 project managers, which is great. I had 4 at Pipe. And they sort of say, we've got to build from Atlanta to Chicago. I had this map in my notepad with a scale on it. And someone would say, Atlanta to Chicago. And I'd go, oh, that's about 800 miles, isn't it? I literally didn't know where cities and states were. And I was supposed to put fibre across this country. So that was eye-opening.
So you stayed there for a year?
Yep, stayed at Google for a year.
Can I just ask, when you left Pipe, I mean, at that point it was publicly listed, was that kind of, I suppose, your exit plan? You know,
no, look, it wasn't. There
or?
was only one job left at Pipe, and my business partner was going to give up the CEO, and it was about time for me to go. So in that respect, it was a bit natural, I suppose. So it was just how it happened. It was a good thing to happen.
And then you came back?
Well, we came back. So in October 2009, we had a buyout offer from TPG Telecom, who's in the press a lot nowadays. They're very acquisitive, to buy Pipe Networks. So we listed the company in 2005 at 40 cents. We got to about $5.50 just prior to GFC, just soon after. So one thing I'll say about if you know the GFC's coming, which no one did, don't start a $200 million subsea cable system from Sydney to Guam. Just before that.
It's a good tip for everyone in the ring.
Good tip, you know, just before a global calamity, don't spend $40 million you can't get back on a $200 million project. That was the reality. So we went from $5, maybe $5.30 or $5.50, down to like about $1.90 in a very short period of time, which is just like debilitating for staff, obviously for founders, for investors. That wasn't the reason I left. I was leaving anyway. Whilst I was away, the share price got better. There's something I haven't thought about before. Whilst I wasn't there, the share price got better. There was a concerted effort.
Sure, we wouldn't phrase it like that.
Yeah, no, I didn't think about it at the time. The world got better. Our submarine project, which everyone viewed as risk, actually got less risky, and we funded and built it effectively. And so we're going to buy it off for $6.30. So we went from 40 cents to $5.40 to $1.90 to $6.30. All within, 4 years? So 4.5 years. So it was a bit of a ride.
I've got a question here actually about that component. Did becoming beholden to shareholders change your view of your business or your ethics in leadership?
No, look, I think that, no. I get asked this a lot. I've been involved with 3 floats directly and probably a 4th indirectly. 3 of those went well, 1 didn't, truthfully. Which is, the company's going well, but the share price is unloved. And I actually look at the ASX especially as a very valid way to raise a Series A scale amount of money for a business. If you're out to do the wrong thing, if you're out to rip off your customers, your employees or your shareholders, you shouldn't list. You shouldn't be in business for a start, but you definitely shouldn't list your company. If you're a good person who has good ethics in business, so you want to do the right thing by customers, because if you do the right thing by customers, everything else is going to happen. And your employees and your shareholders, you'll have less issues. You won't have big, bad issues. So And so it didn't. I mean, I think we always treated ourselves as shareholders when we owned the company 50-50. And I don't think that ever changed. So you just be good people. Yeah,
definitely. So when you came back then, you got involved. Tell us about what you did when you came back.
So came back, had that, so we got the offer in October '09. They didn't settle. It was they call a scheme of arrangement. It's actually an arbitrated buyout process via the courts. It takes about 6 months. That settled in March 2010. That was a really weird day. There's a good lunch at Char's afterwards. I'll tell you what.
There was.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
A long lunch probably.
A long lunch. So we, I made a decision. I didn't want to do anything. It was a hell of a windfall. And I thought I don't want to, go out and buy a peanut factory or something, if you know what I mean. Make a bad investment decision. So I thought I'd just sit on it for a while. So I came back and I relit my networks, and I'd been away for about 14 to 15 months at that stage. So just started re-networking. Found some people I had a lot of respect for, who were doing their own businesses, and mentored them and ended up investing in them. Ultimately, I invested in a few businesses. Went to Sydney a lot because it's we're a regional market in Australia and Brisbane, unfortunately, and so there's a lot of investment activity, and even more so now in Sydney. A lot of the businesses I was seeing were based out of the nascent startup infrastructure down in Sydney at the time, and the fish burners was key to that. And I came back to Brisbane thinking, I've got to find the fish burners in Brisbane, and it was like it wasn't here. Yeah, crickets. So I thought, well, how hard can that be? It's a big piece of office space. I looked at different models. I thought I could do it for profit. When you do things for profit, and for profit is a beautiful motive. I love for profit, but you have customers, not members. You have customers. There's a difference there. I thought I don't want customers. I actually want members. I want a community. So I'll do this as not for profit. So Riversea Labs. So we're just down the road here. That's that way. Trust me, it's that way. No sense of direction, have you?
I can see a road.
550 metres. That's Newstead, that's Fortitude Valley. Sorry, 550 metres of co-working space, just in Wickham Street. We've been going now 4 and a bit years. It's been a hell of a ride. We've learned lots of things. No one cares about cheap desks in Brisbane is the biggest thing that we learned.
Was it the case initially, or is that as
definitely initially.
Yeah.
I think we planned to have 90 desks in there. Wow. I think now we've got 65.
Okay.
So we've put more space towards events, more space towards casual. We've learned that people actually want content. So they're okay to, it's a useful place to, useful in that it's close to transport. It's not a bad little part of town for various things. So we've had to put we've got mentors, a lot of content. So we have accelerator and pre-accelerator programs that work out of there. We have corporate programs, for want of a better term. We have lots of events. And you know there's 4 startup events in Brisbane tonight.
I was very impressed when I heard that.
There's
earlier.
One here, there's one down at Woolly Mammoth afterwards. They're open late for beer as well.
Grind everyone.
And there's one at Riversea Labs, and there's one over at Hatch. Anyway. So what am I talking about again?
I don't know, you just
talking rambling.
About Riversea Labs a little bit, which is great.
Oh, Riversea Labs, yeah. So been there 4 years, done a bunch of stuff. We've also done Startup Catalyst, where we send 18 to 25-year-old kids, excuse me, because I'm old, so I can call them kids, to Silicon Valley for 2 weeks. They've got to be technically capable, so therefore they've got to be the person who can be the tech co-founder of a tech startup. And we take them on tours of Google and Twitter and Facebook and 500 startups and you name it. IBM, Amazon, some really good barbecue joints. As a startup weekend in the middle, we immerse them amongst American entrepreneurs who are also tech co-founders. So they understand that they're as technically good as those guys. So what am I doing wrong? So we're trying to reset their attitude towards entrepreneurship and global scalable businesses.
Great.
Startup Catalyst.
That happened, when did the last...
So we did the first one in December
last year.
13.
Oh, right, okay.
No, it's December 14, sorry, and the second one in October 15 last year. So yeah, right. I missed the first one. I got the opportunity to go on Shark Tank. I had 2 days notice to go on Shark Tank.
Slipping here, but that's okay. We'll talk about Shark Tank.
You go. So I missed
to hear about Shark Tank.
I missed the first one. Because I had the opportunity to do Shark Tank. I went to the second one last year in October, and it was fantastic. It's an amazing place to go. It's a city of contrasts. It's a city of billionaires and homeless men. So So not everything there is good, trust me, because if you've got billionaires in a town, I've got no idea where get homeless men. That's actually embarrassing. But it's all about changing people's perspective. I wanted to call the startup Ebola, right? Because what I wanted to do was to take people over there and infect them with this startup thing. I thought, what's the most infectious disease ever? Ebola. And they can come back and race around here and infect others with a startup. And 2 months before we started the program, Ebola broke out in America, so we couldn't call it that. Well, we could have. We would have got some great press for it. Might not have got through customs at the same time with our Ebola t-shirts on.
So with the CoChair Space, what would you say to anyone considering getting involved or?
Oh, please do come down. Look, it's a clubhouse. It's a clubhouse for early stage startup tech businesses in Brisbane. What is it? It's whatever you want it to be. We are there to assist the progress. I want more billionaires in this town. I want billionaires in this town. Right? I'll settle for 100 millionaires, I'll settle for millionaires, but we need more people with wealth because especially in the tech space, when you create wealth, you create it from one thing, you create it from labour, and it's really well paid labour, right? Really smart people. That's scalable. We talk tech startup who sell to the world, they're 90% export businesses, right? Because we're only 23 million people in Australia on a planet of 5 or 6 billion, whatever it is nowadays, and we're just not that big a market. So if you can export to the world services and technology, it's brilliant. So, and export's obviously measured in dollars in. So
yes. Tell us a little bit about what you've been doing, I suppose, after starting Riverside Labs, what you've done with, well, let's talk about Shark Tank, I suppose, next. How did that come around? How did you?
I had a really frustrating engagement. So as everyone probably knows, or maybe not, I do a lot of lobbying and advocating on behalf of tech startup in Brisbane and in Australia, but I prefer doing it in Brisbane because the rest of Australia can get a buggery. They've got people doing it down there. So I had a chance to lobby some very senior Queensland politicians from the previous government, and there was a professor of entrepreneurship from a university I probably can't mention there, and I spent 25 minutes of a 30-minute meeting explaining myself and why the hell I knew what I was talking about from a guy who'd never been outside academia in his life. I thought I just can't do that, that's ridiculous. So I actually contracted a PR firm and said, look, you've got to raise my profile. So I can't do this if I've got to explain myself as to why the hell I actually know what I'm talking about. And then they came back to me very excited and said, we saw this thing called Shark Tank. Would you like to audition? I said no. I was a huge fan of the UK Dragon's Den TV show, and I liked that. And then when I heard there was a Shark Tank show, which was the US version, I downloaded. I might even pay for it. I might have it legal. I got it somehow anyway. At the time, it was years ago, and I thought, well, I've got the season 1, episode 1, and I watched it and thought, my God, they are so loud and they're angry and they're horrible to entrepreneurs. I didn't even watch the entire first show. I thought, no, I'm done. I don't need to watch that. So they came to me and said, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. I think that if it's a Shark Tank, it's a bit too aggressive for me. And I explained my reasons, and they came back and said, oh no, we understand that, but look, watch a little bit of season 2, they changed. And they did actually, there was a step change. They swapped a couple of guys out, and there was a step change in the approach, which I thought was better. They said, we're sort of targeting somewhere between that and Dragon's Den UK for that. Oh, okay, I'll give that a go. Did the audition, bad day for the audition. Now, I speak too fast and slow my words. It's not the alcohol, that's just how I talk, right? So I gave myself about a 5% chance to get on this TV show because I thought there's no way no one's going to have me. No one knows what I'm saying. They did the audition at the airport. I bought an aircraft and I was doing some flight training. And 10 minutes before they turned up, my flight instructor had managed to destroy $1 million worth of aircraft engine right in front of me. And so I was really happy. And so I did the audition, and I was probably not the best frame of mind. And so I gave myself no chance. They rang back 2 weeks later and said, oh, we were after 5 sharks. You were the 6th best one. I thought, oh, fuck. That's where you tell a 6-year-old so they don't chuck a tantrum, right? So, no worries, your TV show, knock yourself out. I gave myself such a small chance and whatever. And so I was flying to Melbourne on a Wednesday morning. And on Tuesday morning, landed and had a real barney with my PR guy at the time. My PR firm's fantastic. They had 3 people who do copyright, one of who makes really good copy but can't spell or do grammar. And I'm used to it because the words are great. So I just go through and edit it and mark it up in Word and send it back. And so, the 5 o'clock flight to Melbourne, I'm reading it on my smartphone, and they've sent through, and the idiots on the blog haven't changed it from the shitty grammar-filled, horrible unspell check version. So they actually sent through the wrong version, and it's on there, and they haven't checked it, and my name's to it, and it's full of spelling mistakes and grammar errors. So I just sent this evil text message off to my PR guy saying, "You need to fucking call me." And as soon as I land in Melbourne, I get a call from him. I got a little Irish guy, Ash. I said, "Call ID about that effing article," and he goes, "This is Irish." Excuse me. He goes, "Fuck the article." He's Irish. "Do you want to be on Shark Tank?" I'm like, "Doesn't it start next week?" He goes, No, Thursday." I'll ring the wife, let me get back to you. And yeah, so then a day and a half later, I was at R.M. Williams store in Bondi Junction getting fitted out for clothes. And that Friday morning, they introduced the press on a Thursday night, and that Friday morning the doors opened, some guy came and asked us for money. Actually, it was a girl the first up. Came and asked us for money.
Is it the real you on Shark Tank? Or do you,
we get no direction.
No?
We get no direction. Literally, everyone sort of says. So I used to, when I do public speaking, I have these people sort of say, "Can we ask you questions about Shark Tank?" And I sort of say, "Yes, but it is our money." Because the biggest question we get is it your money? Yes, it's our money. We film it all in one go. So we did 4.5 weeks in the first season and 3.5 weeks for the second season. No, we don't know who's coming through the door. And I forgot the fourth one. But there's 4 things I usually say. So, we get no direction. We get absolutely no direction at all.
This could be the fourth question. In fact, any of my questions could be the fourth, so sorry about that. But after you've done that block of filming, what do you walk out going, "Oh, I just wish they would"? Is there something that everyone's
after 4.5 weeks, or
are
you done after 4.5 weeks? You're just like I pitied that last set of entrepreneurs who walked in, and I actually invested in them. God, poor things. Those girls' iced tea. I'm sitting there and going, "Oh yeah." First I was like, "Oh, they got iced tea." I wonder if to impress me, bring booze. What if they bought like a bottle of tequila just to get me to drink more iced tea, right?
Right.
But they
Good
didn't.
tip.
They didn't. No, I think that it's weird. I've actually ended up seeing, so when I negotiated season 2, I said what I want is, I actually want just a low quality cut of the pictures I invest in. Because afterwards we do due diligence. And a lot of times it's a he said, she said type situation. So I go back to my notepad, which is like written like a doctor. It's horrible handwriting. And so we're often arguing about details. So if I can get a copy of the actual, even the audio, I know what was said.
Yeah.
And so it's 55 minutes they compress into 8.
Wow.
And I've watched the 55-minute ones and they are boring.
So 55-minute, the pitch and
Pitching,
conversation.
yeah. A really short 25-minute one, that'll be what they call a carve up. That's where the guy walks in and he's literally like,
He's got nothing.
Might have slight criminal tendencies as well, if you know what I mean.
So I'm going to delve a little bit deeper here into, I suppose, what you look for in a startup. Are there any attributes inherent in people or ideas that you feel consistently do well, apart from the booze?
Apart from the booze. People. So when people walk up and pitch me ideas, I can care less. I truly, unless you can clap and goal force from your hands, I just don't want to hear about it. In which case I'm in. But I want to know that you've got the right attitude to life. I don't want to have to be in a meeting with them in the future and sort of say, "Oh shit, I want to meet this person, I hate them." I just don't want that. I don't need that in my life. So that's a really strange bar to get over with me. Most people aren't like that, so it's probably pretty easy too. You've got to have the right technical skills, whatever you think you're pushing. I don't know what that is. When I say technical skills, my best business is a bunch of blokes who know how to skydive. That's a technical skill, and that's a bloody good business. You've got to identify a problem that people care enough to pay to have solved. And then I listen to your idea, and your idea can be totally wrong. I'm 45, I don't know new ideas. But if you've got the right people with the right skills and the right attitude and the right team attacking a big problem, you'll try the first idea, shit doesn't work, try the second idea. So that's what a pivot is. A pivot isn't changing your problem, a pivot's changing your idea to attack a problem. So if you have to invalidate your problem, then you've got a bigger issue. You've actually probably picked the wrong entrepreneur if you've actually got a problem that doesn't exist. So.
And how do you suggest that startups test those problems? Is there any process that you recommend, or
get in front of customers as fast as you can? There's so many methodologies out there now. There's lean startup, and thank you very much.
Took the hint.
Cheers. They're mid-strengths, it's all right. What's the question? So I get in front of customers as fast as you can.
Yes. Oh yeah, it's a
I was
methodology.
at a startup weekend on Sunday night judging it. which I love. Everyone's all full of energy, and it's a good entrepreneurial activation stuff. Gets people thinking about entrepreneurship, and which is what I like. And one of the teams got up there and said, "Oh, we have this idea." And I thought, "Oh, it's terrible. I've seen this done so many times before, and they're doing it all the wrong way." No worries. So did you get out of the building and talk to someone? Yeah, we spoke to like 6 vendors type thing. What did they say? Oh, they didn't like it. But we thought we'd just push on anyway. You haven't got what this is about. This is about finding out fast what works, not owning it. So I've only read 3 business books in my entire life, and one of them was Colin Powell's book. Not a business book. He's a military man, but I look at it as a business book. And he talks in there about never tying your ego to position. He talks about a militarily defended position, because when that position falls, not if, when that position falls, your ego falls with it. So be prepared to retreat, be prepared to advance, whatever it might be. Don't tie your ego to your position. And I think that's hard to do as an entrepreneur, because this is your idea. You're going to go forward and it's got to work. Why are people so dumb? But you can't do it. You've just got to say, well, that didn't work. Let's just change it a bit and see if it does. If people know the story of Instagram, you know what Instagram started as? Instagram started as a social network for bourbon drinkers, effectively. They had this really cool feature where you could take a picture of a bottle of bourbon with a special filter, and it was all pretty. And that was the only thing people used on it. So, don't be hostage to your first idea.
Speaking of ego, there's a question here. Does ego come into investment? I assume this is relating to Shark Tank, but I won't invest because he's invested or someone else has invested. Is it something? Oh, look,
if there's, with respect to the sharks, no, but if you see a lot of investments out there where you have people who should be on the band directors list as investors. You won't go near it. Your reputation is just not worth it.
Yeah.
So, there's some reasons I won't invest because others are involved. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
Plenty of spivs out there. Respect to Shark Tank, ego. Does it come across that?
No, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was a more general question.
I hope not.
You're all friends.
No.
I'm leaving that well alone. All right. What do you see the key mistakes? We might have covered this off here, but are there any other mistakes that you see repeatedly in entrepreneurs that they make when starting? So maybe apart from kind of not the market testing side of it.
What other mistake can you make?
Well,
I suppose there are lots, but I mean that's the biggest, most fatal one. People don't want what you're selling, and you have to realise that as soon as possible and change it.
Yeah.
But when you drill down below that, okay, so they want what you're selling. So what mistakes are you making? Hover over your books. It's certain people who don't know what it costs to produce, what it costs to sell, and even in a software sense, there is a cost of production. They don't know what the bank balance is. There's only one thing. Losses don't kill companies. Lack of cash kills companies. So cash talks. So understanding the cash is a big thing. Look, trust but verify. So I run a family office. I have exceptionally trusted people in there, but I run an audit once a year, unashamedly. They know they do that. We do it very publicly. So it's a very important thing. A lot of wealth has been lost for people who used to have it because they trusted staff. If you have businesses that deal with cash, and we've got a lot of those now with Shark Tank, there's issues around cash. So trust but verify.
Great. In terms of your investments, what are some of the, you mentioned how important people are. What are a couple of other things you look out for in an investment or when evaluating an investment?
We've satisfied people, we've satisfied team, we've satisfied problem, we've satisfied idea, all that sort of stuff. What are the things we look at? I mean, once you get to that point, they're all the things.
Is there a particular stage that you like to invest at?
Oh, look, you always want to go for it's what you can get. I mean, I'm early stage for the most part. I invested somewhere between, what's my smallest? Would be 10 grand, but that'd be probably, after that would be maybe 70 or 100. Biggest is 3 mil. Average is probably around about sort of $500,000, I suppose. So we like to have traction. Traction can be many things depending on your style of business. So traction can be great if it's revenue, even better if it's profit. Revenue's okay, but user traction is very important as well. So do people like what you have? Okay, so you can't figure out the monetization. Neither could Mark Zuckerberg for God knows how many years. So not as important. Although if you've got his sort of problem, you want to have really, really big friends in your court. So we really look for traction. In a lot of the business we've got, their software as a service business, so understanding sort of unit economics, understanding the sales cycle. You know, if you're going to start the perfect startup, what you do is you go, what is the easy? You know, we're humans, we like easy things. I think we do. You know, do you purposely start a startup that sells really, really expensive software products to Rio Tinto, for example, or the government, which is the longest sale? So you'll spend 3 years maybe getting a sale. So you have to understand the sales cycles. They're the big things that'll kill you. How long does it take you to actually get a sale across the line? And how fast can you stuff potential sales leads into your pipeline? So for budding entrepreneurs out there who really want to understand most parts of the business that count, I would understand the sales signs, how you go from lead to opportunity to sale to various things, and what Salesforce does and have monetized quite well. And about how that relates back to the general sort of P&L and other various ledgers inside the company. So that's important.
Great. Have you ever invested in a business and then realised that it's not your cup of tea?
I've invested in a business and wish I hadn't. Not my cup of tea.
That was a specific wording I just read out there. But yeah, what happened when you wished you hadn't? What did you do?
Oh, so I'd worked with this founder before. And
Brisbane based.
Just making sure I'm not here. And so I know what he did. This guy actually built Google Maps before Google Maps existed. We didn't think there was a demand for it in the consumer world. We had it as a corporate back end. So very, very capable technically. So when I invested in his startup, I honestly thought that the way he was paying himself, which was high, was okay because I knew him. I knew his capability. But so the biggest mistake I made there was, you should never put founders and employees in the poverty line. You should never put founders in the poverty line, never ever employees. But you also can't pay them a massive wage. They get lazy. And so that one really changed how I invest there. So being very aware of how you incentivise your founders. Well, you can't. I mean, you look at. I hear guys bragging about doing deals. They took 55, 60% equity on this poor company. I'm like, going, what's the founder going to work for? If you actually disenfranchise the founder, you've instantly broken the company. So and so when people talk about valuations of startups, there's this constant tension between, well, I as an investor want a really good deal, right? So because I'm out for value. At the same time, I'm a capitalist, not an industrialist. I want to run this company. I want them to run the company and them to actually have the success as well. So I need to pay a premium to do that. And I do that through how much equity I leave them after the investment. So that's the natural tension that actually exists on that slope, I suppose, in the graph. You have to understand where the company's at now, how much cash am I need in the future. At the end state, when that company exits, how much equity that founder will be left with. So he's still incentivized to be there and do the 18-hour days. So at Pipe Networks, for example, we were left with 15% apiece on a $400 million buyout. It's not a bad deal. So don't get too in love with the equity. Be in love with the result of that equity. Providing every round an up round, that is, the shares are valued more and more and more and more, it's actually a good thing.
When pitching to an investor, is it true that you need to have an exit strategy? Is that something you look for or ask about when you're reviewing?
You're not going to think I thought about it, but it's, geez, no business plan involves contact with the customer. Yeah. I suppose in the space I play, the word dividend is never used, so you assume an exit strategy.
Yeah.
No, I don't care about that.
Okay. I've got a few questions here now, so I'm going to power through a few of them while we can. If you could change one thing about investing legislation, what would it be?
Does everyone know how you can get investors in Australia? Because I'm on Twitter and I see so much bullshit get spread around about what you can and can't do. And there's some good guys here from Pitcher Partners and where's Cole and crew? Yep, talk to them, they're pretty good at it. But you can approach 20 people a year. This is not advice. You go to those guys for that, right?
Disclaimer.
But you can take investment from 20 people per year for up to $2 million effectively. And they can be of any wealth status. It has to be a a private offer, I forget what the term is now, it has to be an offer, it has to be a personal offer. Or if that person is what they call a sophisticated investor or a high net worth, they earn more than $250,000 a year, or they can invest $500,000, or they have $2.5 million in assets, you can approach 1,000 of those guys, it doesn't really matter. So I actually don't think investing legislation in Australia is broken. If you actually understand what that means, 250 grand a year. I have mates who turn renters on mine sites who earn more than 250 grand a year. And if there's a large portion of the population, grab some ABS stats and try and work out who's worth 250 grand a year, you might be shocked. So, I think there are potentially a large pool of investors out there that people don't access because they believe the doomsayers on Twitter, rather than just pulling out what is actually pretty plain legislation and reading it. So what would I change on investor legislation? That being said, my dad, who's a man of less means than me, would chase his life savings into the same shitty things that I do. And I say that because I like my startup founders, I like my companies, but there's a few things about them. They're overvalued because I'm looking at blue sky. So right now they're overvalued. They're illiquid. If you've got to get your money out, guess what? You can't, right? And most of them aren't going to work. So, you know, for a person who doesn't have a great deal of spare capacity in their life, it's a bad thing to do. So I always apply my dad test to that sort of stuff. So I actually don't mind the current environment we have. When we talk about crowdsourcing, I think you can get rid of all the issues around crowdsourcing, open up totally, but only bookmakers are allowed to actually sell the equity. Because if you do that, you emphasise this is a gamble. If you're in this class of company, you have to crowdsource from mums and dads. It's a bet on Melbourne Cup Day. Hey, you could win big.
What are your dad rules that you just referred to?
My dad rules are, you know, my dad rules. It's more of a, when people talk about how they change the system, how they change regulations. I think to myself, okay, so if they change it, so my dad would invest in the things is legally allowed to invest in the things I am. That's a bad thing. So. There's no specific rule. It's just like, oh my God, my dad invests in this shit. Yeah. Excuse me. But you know, I have 20% of my portfolio, probably less than 20% of my portfolio in startup investments. The rest is in really, really sort of sensible stuff, to be honest. So it's risky. It's mostly going to fail. It's illiquid, and the valuations are stratospheric where they should be compared to normal businesses because you have to incentivise founders. So there's a lot of things that are really, you know, you have to understand about them.
What proportion of your investments would be in non-tech?
No, I don't break it down between tech and non-tech. I have like my startup portfolio and my other stuff.
In your investment? So companies that you've invested in, what percentage of them are non-tech?
Non-tech? Oh. From my startup portfolio, okay.
Yeah. So you're not specifically looking for tech companies when you invest?
No. I look for founders. I literally look for founders. So the reason I'm struggling is because I have two valuations. I have what we call the actual value we've invested at, we mark to market. So if there's a capital raise, we'll market to market. Because some are listed and they're very easy to value. When we say mark to market, that if you invest in there at a valuation of $100,000 and they go out 2 years later and raise money at $1 million, you get to mark your investment up by 10 times. That's called mark to market. That's what you do when you look at your shares every day, effectively. Just the market doesn't move very often with smaller companies. So we've got one of our biggest winners is non-tech. It's the indoor skydiving company. So that's it'd be quite, in valuation sense, to be quite high.
Okay. What do you see as the difference between a startup and a small business? Definition-wise.
A failure mode for a startup can be a small business. So a startup, in my opinion, is something that can rapidly scale across the planet with little impediment. A small business, you've got to pretty well drive to your customer.
Okay, great. How do you redress the gender divide in the startup community? Yeah,
it's there. It's bad. I don't like late stage solutions to any problem. So I look at everything as a pipeline. So there's I got in trouble the other day with someone I was mentoring. There's a female orientated accelerator called
in Sydney.
Springboard, I want to say, is that right?
Springboard.
Yeah, Springboard. And they were applying for that and I'm like, oh my God, okay, whatever. which didn't go down well. And I'm like, well, because to me the problem is we don't have enough. Okay, I don't believe we have enough data to definitively say there's an investment problem in Australia. I invest in startups. I don't see enough quality, right? And for me to make that statement, so this is going to be a long answer. For me to make that statement, and I say it in front of startup founders, they go, "But you won't invest in my company's good." Well, let's have a look at what you're doing. When you're seeking investment, you are selling equity. And the customers of that are the investors. And they are saying, yeah, no. So the customer's wrong, are they? So if you were selling a product and they weren't buying it, you'd change the product. But you're selling equity and they're not buying it, you're saying, well, they're all wrong. Let's find more customers, so hopefully one will make a mistake and buy my equity. It's disingenuous. Now there could be a problem there. I actually don't think we have enough in the pipeline to understand if there's a problem. If you look at the corner case, the absolute far right corner case, that's Israel, where you've got a population of 8.4 million people and 7,200 viable tech startups. We wouldn't have 1,000 in Australia. We've got 23 million people. We have a deal flow problem. The same thing with respect to females. We shouldn't be sort of saying, for the ones who make it through the skinny pipeline we have now, okay, we'll fund you because you've made it through. We should be overstuffing the front of that pipeline with female founders. And then only the best will get through and deserve to get through. Yep. So that's what I prefer to see happen.
What would you like to see corporations and/or government doing to better facilitate and encourage innovation, drive innovation?
Well, I actually hate the term innovation when it comes to corporates, especially because I think it's false and disingenuous. Especially when it's forced by government as well. So they're sort of saying, hey, you must be innovative. And the corporation who's like looking at their customer, and the government's this force on the side sort of poking in the ribs, sort of saying, you must do innovation. They're like, oh, okay, I have to do it. What's the minimum I need to do to get you to leave me alone? That's what they care about. If you incentivize and you incentivize a bunch of nimble, agile startups to go and actually attack their market and take market share from them, they do that using one tool. They don't realise it. They do that using innovation. So if you're attacking an incumbent, you use innovative techniques. It may be technology, it may be sort of business process, who knows, to take market share. So then that incumbent, that enterprise goes, holy shit, someone's taking our market. Leave us alone, government, someone's taking our market. We've got to innovate to fix them. Then they care about it. They're actually engaged in the process. So top-down innovation, terrible idea. Bottom-up innovation, using entrepreneurship. So it has to be not innovation, it has to be entrepreneurship. How do entrepreneurs compete? They do shit different. They do it like customers want it, not like they've been told they have to have it from the big guys. That's innovation, and that's how it's got to be seeped in from the bottom, not driven down from the top.
I was watching something recently where you were talking about startup hubs in Israel and Silicon Valley and what they're doing differently to here. What can Brisbane learn from those other centres?
I love going to both Silicon Valley and Israel. They are amazing. Israel is far off to the right-hand side. So corner case, it's incredible. I hope and think that we can reach that level of concentration. They have so it's interesting that you pick those two, right? Because what happens is everyone sort of says, and I was in Canberra last week or the week before. No, this week was it? Today, Wednesday. Yeah, no, last week I was in Canberra, and at the Parliament House, and they had a David Thodey, they had someone else, and they had the chick from Sky News. That's terrible, Janine Perrott, and she was sort of saying how entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley would be embarrassed about how much Australian entrepreneurs demand government intervention because they don't have government intervention, which is really weird because like in Israel they have an amazing amount of government intervention. They have the Office of the Chief Scientist who provide funds, they fund accelerators, incubators, they fund VC firms, usually dollar for dollar, so usually co-funded. So it's an amazing amount of support in Israel that's got them where they are now. And I think that Janine's quite disingenuous because in the US they don't have draconian employee share option laws. They have something called the QSB, Qualifying Small Business, which is a whole bunch of capital gains tax relief. So there is government support in the US that she was just clueless on, to be honest. And I wasn't quick enough to argue against her. But there is government support at various levels, very much so in Israel, but a bit more hidden in the US.
Mm. And are there any other elements we can learn from them or that we should be looking to them?
Risk. Start something. Literally, I find the university sector in this country, sorry QUT Business School, I find the university sector in this country depressing. They've got our kids for 3 to 4 years, right? And they churn out a very high quality technical product. I'm not complaining about the technical quality of the product, but entrepreneurially dull. And our stats prove it. And then when Malcolm Turnbull turns up and says all flowery words about innovation entrepreneurship, which is great, they go, well, if you just give us more money, we'll do better. But you've got them for how long? I don't get it. I'm like, so what's the question again? So I've got some more ranting these.
Just learning from other centres.
So we need to, why is it that 90-something% of the MIT Business School with the graduates sort of say, I want to go and create a firm, not get a job. Whereas that'll be inverted here. That's our problem. We're not enough people sort of trying and daring. And the weird thing is, as part of the innovation statement, they've done a couple of good things, right? I don't like most of it. Over 800 mil of $1 billion goes back to the universities. We've done that for 15 years. We've proved it doesn't work. It's a really bad idea. But we'll give them some more cash to prove it's a bad idea. But the director say, so they've done a few things that cost nothing that you can prove or immediately put to a budget anyway. They've done the director safe havens and talked to the pictures and the lawyer guys. They probably know more about this. But there's director safe havens, there's going from the same business test to a similar business test, the ipso facto stuff, and there's one other thing that will take 5 or 10 years to kick in, but will allow us to risk more and recycle risk, which will be truly massive. So if you don't know about it, please read about it. If you don't understand about it, it'll probably take an extra 3/4 an hour of digging to understand it. Please do, because it's actually quite important. And when understanding what they're trying to do. So in the US, they have the Chapter 11. This is Chapter 11 light, I suppose, in some respects. So I think we need to risk more. We need to do something. For God's sake, start something. 10 years on from Twitter. Twitter started in 2006. It was actually initially a service that you actually cost you to send and receive, because it used to cost you money to send and receive a text message in the US. And it was initially over text. It was a horribly expensive service. So back in 2006, who the hell would have invested in something that cost so much? But some crazy bastard started it, and some crazy bastard bloody funded it. We don't pick winners. Pick good people with good skills and good ideas and the right intent. They'll work the idea out later on. Just forget the winner picking. It doesn't work.
We're almost out of time, so I'm going to finish up with 3 more questions. One from our audience tonight. So much focus is given to tech startups, but there are so many people out there doing other awesome stuff. How can they get attention? What advice would you give to them?
Start a tech startup. Sorry. How else do you get, like Instagram, 0 to $1.3 billion buyout in 14 months? How else do you do that when you're producing plastic things or you're making bread? And these are all things that are good. I'm not trying to belittle those occupations. Please don't take it that way. I'm about creating billionaires for Australia. How do you do that? You service the globe. That's how you do it. Right? Once you get rich, you can do what the hell you want with your money. Hopefully you'll give some back to the community, you'll do good. Right? Literally, we need more success. Big, huge success. We're not going to get that if we think that this small market of 23 million people is a worthwhile thing pursuing. That'll happen anyway. It will happen naturally. Look out. Get the talent looking outwards.
What is a typical day for you? What does that look like these days?
Oh God, my daughter wakes up about 5:20. She's great. Screams a lot. Nappy change. Bit too much information.
No.
No.
Sure, everyone wants to hear.
So I spend about an hour in the car getting here in the morning. I'm a bit bourgeois. I actually get a driver now, and I manage to do an hour's worth of work in the car. I get in by about between sort of 10 past 8 and 8:30. Literally, I probably do about 8 or 9 meetings a day. Probably 2 nights a week on average. I do things like this. Go home, wake up, rinse, repeat.
Are you mainly working on transition level investments stuff? Or a mix?
Yeah, probably a bit of both. Probably 1/3 River City sort of advocacy, 2/3 my own investments, I suppose. Shark Tank starting in early mid-May. They're not sure when. I think it's going to be sort of the first half of May, I think.
Right.
So that'll
get for a while.
That'll get really busy. I'm going to a trade mission to China with the federal government soon. April sometime. Well, I'll have PA, she tells me where to be. I know next stage,
Yeah.
you need to be here tomorrow.
I was a bit worried because she's away at the moment. So I
Sure,
emailed her. I thought, oh no, I hope he makes it. So that's awesome that you're here. To finish off tonight, can you give us 3 tips for people in this room who have a company, want a company, thinking about a company? 3 tips to walk away with.
3 tips all right. Hey, do it. I mean, don't hit 65 and go, I could have been, I should have been, I would have been. Please, like, that'd be dreadful. If we're talking about corporations and enterprise, just do the right thing by your customers, your staff, and your investors, and you're probably not going to go wrong, to be honest. The third thing would be, I suppose, the one thing I probably did wrong, I wish I did better. For those who've known me for a few years know that I've changed in size quite a bit. So I made myself quite unhealthy when I was doing my startups. Don't do that. Don't risk your health. It's actually not worth it. So please look after, because there's a bit of a badge of honour about the 23-hour days and all that sort of crap and carry on. That's not worth it. You need to be around for your kids, you need to be around for your grandkids. So look after yourself and please be successful.
Thank you, some good tips. Well, I'd like you to join me in thanking Steve for his time today. If you can stand up and give him a round of applause, I really appreciate it. I have a small token of our appreciation that we'd like to pass on as well.